They say the loudest prayers aren't whispered in churches. They're screamed between gears and gasoline. Once Ray Steele Carter was the kind of man whose name made small towns lock their doors. A Hell's Angel, a road legend, a ghost that roared on chrome and thunder. But every rider eventually runs out of road. Now at 58, with scars older than his regrets, Ray stood outside a sun-baked garage in the middle of nowhere. No family, no patch. Just one key, one broken Harley, and a past that refused to die. Before we dive into his story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And if you believe in second chances, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next proved that even the lost can find their way home. Before we start the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching this from? And if you enjoy our stories, please consider subscribing to our channel. It'll help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers and keep sharing more inspiring content with you. The sign above the shop was barely legible. Iron Mercy Garage. The paint had peeled until only the word mercy remained, fitting for a man who'd run out of it. Inside, time had stopped. Tools hung like relics, dust thick enough to write sins in. Ray dropped his bag and listened to the silence. It was the kind that pressed on your ribs, heavy with old ghosts. In the far corner sat a half-built Harley chopper, a black frame, chrome pipes, and a gas tank scrawled with a message in faded Sharpie. For the one who lost his way. He froze. The handwriting, like rough, uneven, but was familiar. He reached out, tracing it with his grease-stained thumb. That was Eli Kane's writing. Eli, the kid who used to follow him at rallies, all eyes and engine dreams. But Eli had been gone 10 years, killed in a highway crash, chasing the man he called a legend. Ray's chest tightened. The past, it seemed, hadn't buried him. It had been waiting. Ray spent the first night on the cold floor, whiskey bottle as his only company. He didn't sleep. The echoes in that garage weren't normal. They carried memory. The clank of tools, the faint hum of a motor that wasn't there. Every sound dragged him backward to the rallies, the fights, the roads lined with mistakes. By dawn, sunlight slashed through the broken window, turning the Harley's metal bones to gold. He rose, hungover, angry at the silence. "You left me this?" he muttered, glaring at the bike. "What the hell am I supposed to do with a ghost?" But something inside whispered back, "Build it." So he did what he hadn't done in years. He worked. First the engine casing, then the frame alignment. His hands remembered even if his heart didn't. Hours turned to days. When he wasn't tightening bolts, he was loosening guilt. By the time the desert evening fell, the old biker who'd walked in broken was covered in grease. And maybe, for the first time in years, purpose. It started with a knock. 3 slow raps against metal. Ray looked up, expecting dust or wind. Instead, a figure stood in the doorway. Leather jacket, grey beard, dark sunglasses. "Didn't think the great Steele Carter worked with his hands anymore," the man said. Ray knew that voice. Mick Dalton, an old angel who'd gone clean before the club went rotten. "Heard you found Kane's project," Mick continued, stepping inside. "Kid was working on that bike for you." Ray frowned. "For me?" "Yeah," Mick said, pulling something from his pocket. A folded envelope, oil-stained and yellowed. "Found this in his locker the day after his crash." He tossed it on the bench. Ray hesitated, then unfolded the paper. "If he ever finds this place," it read, "tell him I believed in the man under the patch, the one who rode for something real." Ray's hands trembled. He looked up at Mick. "Why tell me now?" Mick shrugged. "Because I think you're finally desperate enough to listen." By the 3rd week, the Iron Mercy garage had become something holy. Ray rose with the sunrise, his routine as steady as a throttle. Fix, weld, remember. The locals started noticing. A few mechanics stopped by. Then a delivery driver, all curious about the lone biker rebuilding a ghost's dream. None dared ask questions, but they left coffee, parts, even a meal or two. Word travels fast in small towns, and soon whispers spread. The fallen angel is fixing his wings. One evening, as Ray polished the rebuilt carburetor, Mick rolled in again, not alone this time. 2 bikes followed, their engines cut like a heartbeat stopping. "You got company," Mick said. From the shadows stepped Ryder and Tusk, 2 original members of Ray's old crew. They looked older, quieter, but still dangerous. "We heard what you're doing," Ryder said. "Eli was like a little brother to us, too. You finished that bike. We ride it with you. When last time?" Ray didn't answer. He just nodded. Some promises didn't need words. Nights in Dust Haven grew colder, but the work didn't stop. The Harley, Eli's dream, was nearly done. Every part carried history. The chipped headlight from an outlaw rally, the worn grips from a rookie's first ride, the engine rebuilt with hands that had once destroyed more than they created. Ray could almost hear Eli's laugh in the hum of the motor. When he turned the key that night, the garage shook. The Harley came alive, a deep, roaring pulse that made the windows rattle and his chest ache. It wasn't just a bike anymore. It was forgiveness on wheels. Mick stepped forward, voice rough. "He'd be proud, Steele." Ray looked at the machine, eyes burning. "No," he said softly. He'd be home, and in that moment something changed. The ghosts went quiet. The road outside seemed to whisper again, not in judgment, but in invitation. For the first time in years, Ray Carter smiled. The man who'd once lived for chaos had just rebuilt peace. A week later, the hum of engines returned to Dust Haven. Not as ghosts this time, but as brothers. Bear, Ryder, and Tusk rolled in again, each bike painted with the wear of miles and memories. They didn't come to drink or reminisce. They came to build. The Iron Mercy garage was alive now. Tools clanging, engines firing, music leaking from a busted radio that only played classic rock when it felt like it. Ray worked alongside them, shoulders heavy but eyes clear. Each man carried a different story, a different regret, but Eli's bike bound them together like chain links forged by fire. "He called this the redemption build," Mick said one evening, wiping sweat from his brow. "Said one day it'd make a man remember who he used to be." Ray looked at the half-painted tank, the word mercy stenciled beneath the clear coat. "Maybe that man's finally worth remembering," he murmured. No one replied. They didn't need to. Brotherhood wasn't about talk. It was about showing up when the world stopped believing in you. It was past midnight when Ray found the letters, hidden inside a toolbox drawer, lined with old shop towels, sealed in a grease-stained envelope. There were 3 of them, all addressed simply, to Steele. His hands trembled as he opened the first. "If you're reading this, you're still breathing. Good. Means you've got time to make things right. The club wasn't your story. It was your warning. Don't die proving you're tough. Live proving you can change." The second letter was shorter, written weeks before Eli's crash. "They said you were gone for good. But I don't believe the road kills men like you. It just waits till you're ready to ride again." Ray sat there for a long time, the letters shaking in his calloused hands. For the first time in years, the tough old biker felt tears sting his eyes. He didn't bother wiping them. He just whispered into the dark, "Guess I kept you waiting too long, kid." The next morning, Ray started the rebuild with a new kind of energy. Every bolt, every spark plug, every polished chrome piece carried meaning. He wasn't just fixing a machine, he was finishing a promise. The angels worked with him day and night, their laughter echoing off the garage walls like echoes of younger days. Bear handled the wiring, Mick tuned the ignition, and Tusk, the quiet one, welded the final frame bracket while humming an old outlaw ballad. By sunset, the Harley stood complete, black and gold, fierce and clean. The tank read, Eli's ride, for the ones who never quit. They stood around it in silence, the kind only real riders understand. Ray broke it first. "She's not mine," he said. "She's ours, his dream, our hands." Bear nodded. "Then we do what bikers do best," Ray smirked. "Ride?" "No," Bear grinned. "Ray's hell for a reason." The plan was simple. One final ride through the desert, not to forget, but to remember. They hit the road at dawn. The air was sharp, the desert wide and endless. The 5 bikes thundered across the horizon like steel stallions chasing the sunrise. Locals stopped to watch. Men who'd once called them outlaws, now tipping their hats in respect. Ray rode lead, Eli's Harley roaring beneath him like a heartbeat resurrected. For miles, none of them spoke. The sound of engines said everything. The pain, the redemption, the memories. When they reached the canyon overlook, Ray cut the motor and let the silence fall. From his saddlebag, he pulled a small patch, Eli's old Ride Honest emblem, and pinned it to the seat. "You made it, kid," he said softly. Mick placed his helmet beside it, and so did we. For a long moment, none of them moved. The wind carried only the echo of engines past, not ghosts anymore, but guardians. In that stillness, the road didn't feel endless. It felt eternal. That night, back at the Iron Mercy garage, the angels gathered one last time. The ride had changed them, not because they'd found forgiveness, but because they'd learned they didn't have to keep running from it. Ray sat beside Eli's rebuilt Harley, tracing the letters on the tank. The garage glowed under soft yellow light. Tools hanging in perfect order, silence humming like peace. Mick poured a round of whiskey. "To the ones who didn't make it, and to the ones who finally did," Ray added. They drank without words. Outside, the desert night hummed with crickets and faraway engines, maybe real, maybe imagined. Before leaving, Bear turned back at the door. "What now, Steele?" Ray smiled faintly. "Now I build for the living." When the last bike faded into the distance, he turned off the lights, leaving only the Harley shining under a single bulb. Redemption, he realized, wasn't a destination. It was a workshop, and for the first time in years, the tools were finally in the right hands. A month passed, and Iron Mercy Garage no longer looked abandoned. Fresh paint covered the walls, the scent of oil mixed with roasted coffee, and a new sign hung above the bay door. Iron Mercy Brotherhood built, not bought. Ray reopened the shop quietly, no grand speech, no flyers, just the steady rhythm of tools and the kind of honesty that draws the right people. Locals began stopping by, not just for repairs, but for advice. Veterans, drifters, and ex-riders looking for direction found a seat and a story waiting. One afternoon, a teenage boy named Liam wandered in, clutching a carburetor like it was a wounded bird. "My old man used to fix bikes," he said. "Don't know how." Ray nodded, handing him a wrench. "Then today, you start." They worked side by side in silence, the sound of turning bolts and breathing engines replacing small talk. By evening, the bike sputtered to life, and Liam grinned for the first time. Ray smiled back. He'd seen that same spark once before, in Eli Kane's eyes. The hellsangels came back on weekends, not to raise hell, but to help rebuild something worth belonging to. Mick brought parts, Bear brought stories, and Tusk, the quietest of them all, brought respect. They called it the Redemption Run Crew. Word spread across the Southwest. The old outlaw, Steele Carter, was running a shop where broken men got a second chance. Some came with rusted engines. Others came with rusted souls. Either way, the rule was the same. Leave your past at the door, pick up a wrench, and build something that matters. Even the town sheriff, once cautious of Ray, started stopping by for coffee. "Place like this," he said one morning, "keeps more peace than a badge ever could." Ray just nodded, tightening a bolt. "We're not saints, Sheriff. Just men learning to ride straight, the sheriff grinned. That's close enough. For the first time in decades, the angels weren't feared. They were respected, and Iron Mercy had become their church. Late one night, Ray sat alone in the garage, the hum of a cooling engine filling the silence. On the wall above his workbench hung Eli's photo, the same one he'd found that first day. Beneath it, pinned carefully, were the 3 letters. The words had faded, but their meaning hadn't. He poured a shot of whiskey, raised it to the picture, and said softly, "You were right, kid. The road wasn't finished with me." Just then, headlights cut across the front window. A woman stepped out of a pickup, worn jeans, leather jacket, determination in her eyes. "You Ray Carter?" she asked. "Used to be," he said. "It depends who's asking." She smiled faintly. "Name's Riley Kane. Eli was my brother." The world seemed to still. She handed him a folded piece of paper, another letter, edges yellowed. He wrote this before his last ride. Said if I ever found the man named Steele, I should give it to him. Ray's hands shook as he unfolded it. One final message from the kid who saved his soul. The letter was short, written in grease pencil on shop paper. "Steele, if you're reading this, it means you're still fighting. Don't stop. Someday somebody's gonna walk into your life needing the same thing I needed, a reason to believe again. Give it to them. That's how we keep riding, even when we're gone." Ray folded the paper carefully, sliding it into his vest pocket. "He was right," he said quietly. Riley looked around the garage at the rows of bikes, the laughter of men fixing engines, the air heavy with purpose. "He'd love this," she said. Ray smiled faintly. "He built it, Riley. I just finished the frame." She nodded, tears brimming. Before she left, she ran her hand over Eli's Harley, the bike that started it all. "You gonna keep it?" she asked. "No," Ray replied. "Gonna ride it." Every year, same route he mapped out. The redemption run. Anyone who's ever lost their way can join. Riley grinned through her tears. "Then save me a seat." The first redemption run began that summer. 20 bikes lined up outside Iron Mercy Garage. Patched riders, new riders, even townsfolk who'd once crossed the street to avoid them. Ray led the pack, Eli's black and gold Harley roaring like thunder reborn. The desert wind cut through leather and memory as they rode past the canyon, through ghost towns, along the same stretch of highway where Eli's story had ended, and begun again. When they reached the overlook, Ray parked, the others following in reverent silence. He looked out at the endless road, sunlight catching the chrome like fire. "This," he said, "isn't about sin or salvation. It's about keeping the wheels turning. For Eli, for every rider who fell and got back up." The group raised their helmets in the air, engines rumbling in salute. As the convoy thundered back toward Dust Haven, the horizon glowed orange and wild. The road wasn't just asphalt anymore, it was legacy. And at its heart rode one man who'd finally learned that fixing bikes was easy. Fixing souls took faith. By autumn, Iron Mercy wasn't just a garage anymore. It was a movement. Riders from all over the country rolled through Dust Haven, each with a story that started with loss and ended with hope. Some left behind parts, others left behind pain. Ray watched it all unfold from his corner stool, cigarette in hand, grease on his knuckles, peace in his heart. Even the patch clubs started sending prospects to him, not for power, but for grounding. "You got something here, Steele," Mick told him one evening, sipping coffee beside the open bay. "Something even the angels forgot. Heart." Ray chuckled. "Nah, I just stopped pretending we were devils." The 2 men sat quietly, watching a new kid tune his first bike under Liam's supervision. The boy grinned when the engine fired, that same pure spark Ray had once seen in Eli's eyes. In that moment he knew the road had come full circle. He'd built more than motorcycles. He'd built a family. one forged in honesty, not fear. Winter rolled in with its quiet kind of wisdom. The garage doors stayed open, the heaters roaring, laughter spilling out into the cold. One night, as the crew packed up, the sheriff stopped by again, not to warn, but to invite. "The town council's giving out community awards," he said. "Figured you should know," Ray smirked. "What would they even write on it? A most improved outlaw?" The sheriff grinned. "Something like that." When the night of the ceremony came, the hall was full. Farmers, kids, even families who'd once crossed the street to avoid him. When Ray's name was called, he didn't walk up with swagger. He walked up with humility. "I don't deserve this," he said into the mic. "I just fixed what someone else started. A kid named Eli Kane showed me that engines and people break for the same reason: neglect. You take care of one, it'll keep running. You take care of both. Maybe you make it home." The crowd stood silent for a moment, then applause filled the room like thunder on open road. Months later, a new project rolled into Iron Mercy, an old police motorcycle from the 1960s, stripped and forgotten. "We'll restore it," Liam said, excitement sparking. Ray nodded. "Not for sale, though, for show." Together, they turned the relic into a memorial bike, polished to perfection, with a brass plaque on the tank that read, "In honor of all who rode toward the storm, so others didn't have to." When it was done, Ray stood back, wiping sweat and pride from his brow. "You know," Mick said, leaning on a wrench, "that's the first bike you built that ain't for running away." Ray smiled. "That's because I finally stopped." Outside, a dozen riders idled on the highway, their engines humming like a prayer. The redemption run had grown into a brotherhood that stretched across 6 states. Ex-soldiers, ex-cons, lost kids, and mechanics all bound by one creed: ride honest. And at the center of it all was Ray, no longer the enforcer, no longer the legend, just a man who'd finally earned peace on 2 wheels. On the first anniversary of the redemption run, the garage filled with faces old and new. Riley Kane arrived again, this time with a box. Inside was Eli's original leather vest, worn, cracked and patched with one phrase on the back: "Built to rise." She handed it to Ray quietly. "He'd want you to have it." Ray swallowed hard, brushing his thumb across the words. He hung it on the wall above the Harley, right between the letters and the map Eli had drawn. "He's still riding," Ray said softly. "Every mile we take, he's right there with us." That evening, as the sun dipped low, the bikes lined up again, stretching far down the desert road. Ray led them like a conductor of thunder. The engines roared to life, echoing through canyons, carrying Eli's spirit farther than any of them could see. Each rider wore a small iron pin stamped with the word mercy, because in the end, that was all they had, and all they needed. Years later, people still told the story of the old biker who built second chances from broken parts. Tourists came from out of state just to see Iron Mercy, now half museum, half garage, still humming with the sound of life being rebuilt. A plaque by the entrance read, "Founded by Ray Steele Carter," proof that even a man who lost everything can still build something that saves others. Inside, the black and gold Harley still stood under soft light, polished and waiting, Eli's vest hanging above it like a guardian angel. Every year, on the anniversary of that first ride, the angels, old and new, rolled out across the desert together. No banners, no fame, just the quiet thunder of redemption rolling on chrome. Ray Carter, grey and slow but smiling, would whisper before kicking his engine alive, "For the ones who never quit." Then the bikes would roar, and the road would answer. Because some stories never end, they just keep riding. If this story hits you right in the heart, if you believe that men can change, that steel can be reborn, and that brotherhood isn't about crime but courage, then ride with us. Subscribe, share, and keep the engine of hope alive. Because sometimes the angels that save us don't fly, they ride.